This is unfortunate that we've had a number of, before a number of our cabinets, we've had some unfortunate news to announce. So it is sad to hear about the recent incident on the Doncaster to London train. And I'm sure you'll all join with me in giving our sympathies to those affected, but also our thanks to those that are already have displayed significant leadership and heroism in this incident. We don't know anything more about it, so I shan't say anything more about it at this moment, but I thought we should note it. Apologies for absence. We do have some apologies for absence today. Councillor Lewis Adams has just arrived back from London after his mother-in-law passed away, so he won't be able to be here today. But Councillor Lorraine Grocott is also away today. Okay.
And Councillor Passingham.
And Councillor Passingham has sent his apologies also.
We are expecting Hannah Buckley. She's stuck on the M40 in a bit of a tailback at the moment, but be here as soon as she can. Thank you. And
does anybody have any disclosures of interest that they need to make us aware of for today? No? In that case, I move on to the minutes. We have to confirm and sign the minutes held on the 6th of October. Are you all in agreement about the accuracy of those minutes? There's nothing to be changed. All agree and accept those minutes? Thank you very much indeed. We now move on to the matters to be referred to Council, and the first one is the scrutiny protocol, which is on pages 13 to 26, and that comes under the portfolio of Councillor Gist. Do you want to introduce that one?
Thank you, Leader. This is a scrutiny protocol. Government guidance on overview and scrutiny recommends that councils have a protocol in place which will, and I'm quoting from them, help define the relationship between parties and mitigate any differences of opinion. I want to thank OSC for their careful consideration of the protocol. And the recommendation to Council is that the scrutiny protocol be adopted and that the monitoring officer be delegated to make any minor or legislative amendments to the protocol should the government's guidance change.
And just from my point of view, this is something that a great many of the councils already have in place, but it's suggested as good practice by the governance, the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny, and I assume that the protocol has followed those kind of guidance. Okay. Anybody who want to? Councillor Crump.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, obviously, at the last Cabinet meeting, when it came before it was deferred, I'd got no problems with the original protocol, and I congratulated Councillor Gist at the time for producing it and putting us on an even keel on this, so I've got no real issues about it. After some debate at scrutiny, it was asked to come back so that I could discuss it. And there was 2 amendments. One amendment that was fine, not a problem. I did a bit of more transparency, so it was fine. But then there was another amendment which I found quite slightly disturbing, and I know the monitoring officer's not here today, and I thank her for her efforts, and Mr. Perks and Mr. Anderson, because we felt it was, well, I did, and other members of the OSC felt the Liberal group's amendment was unconstitutional, or was going against the Constitution. And it wasn't great, but thanks to strong leadership by 2 members of the Council's leadership team, that amendment was withdrawn, and quite rightly so, in my opinion. So, after my rant now, I certainly think the protocol we've got now is fine. It doesn't fetter the workings of OSC, and it also makes sure that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee can respond back both verbally and in a written report. So I think that is fair and reasonable. So thank you for that.
Tony Perks, the Deputy Chief Executive, would like to come in at this point.
Thank you, Leader. It's just really a point of administration as much as anything. As the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny Committee pointed out, during the debate that we had on Wednesday last week, it was suggested that a slight amendment to paragraph 4.3 of the protocol be adopted. You'll see that in your update sheet that we provided from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. It's on page 3. Just adding a small supplement to the bottom of paragraph 4.3. I would just making sure the Cabinet are happy to include that. I don't think as officers we've any problem with that, and the Overview and Scrutiny Committee are recommending that you do that.
Councillor Giss.
Yeah, I mean, I was observing at OSC. I've got no issue at all with that proposed amendment, and I don't know if we need to vote on it, do we? I'm looking at Mr Buckley.
Chair, I'd suggest that within your recommendation to Council, you reflect as amended in line with the OSC recommendation.
Was just to add the paper assessment available to all members of the OSC after each meeting, described in paragraph 4.2 to paragraph 4.3. Yeah, okay. Okay, fine. Councillor Giss, do you want to come back in?
I just wanted to be very clear to Councillor Crump, just so there's no doubt. There's no intention whatsoever on our part to silence you in any way. You're there to tell us what you think, and we very much appreciate it. And I'm sorry if it appeared that that was not the case.
Councillor Pemberton would like to come in.
Thank you very much, Chair. First of all, I welcome what Councillor Gist has to say about overview and scrutiny. It would, I can't imagine it's in the leader's DNA to allow for anything that could or even be perceived as fettering overview and scrutiny, because it is, we are all agreed, it is a more than useful function. It's a necessary function for good governance and good decision making. And whilst it might seem superficially attractive for any administration to want to control things, be careful what you wish for, because a subsequent administration might not be quite so honourable as this one. I did have a particular question. Can I just confirm and clarify that the delegation of any change to the protocol given to officers would solely be the result of it being in line with a change from government guidance, and also to understand where the line is about that? So, for example, a different national government might take a different view about overview and scrutiny. All I'm trying to get to is that, yes, stylistic, grammatical, minor changes, but we don't want to perhaps be in a position where unintended consequences mean that officers can change almost anything. I just want some clarity and some certainty and comfort around that, if I may, from Councillor Gist.
Yes, you've made one comment about my DNA, and you're quite right. I have an absolute faith in being able to making sure that there's always, in every administration, there should always be a critical friend. But not only with what the council is doing, but also having the ability to bring in other people who work with us in partnership, who are so crucial to the work of this council, and being able to ask advice from them, but also have a critical friend input to this council, so that we'll get the best of the best from this council. And you're quite right about my approach, that I do not like anything to be fettered. Councillor Gist and then Councillor Coles.
I'll take your point. It does say minor or legislative amendments to the protocol. I would obviously take the monitoring officer's advice. If something substantially changes, then of course we'd all need to look at it again. I've got no intention of, trying. How could I? But I wouldn't in any event.
Councillor Coles, and then I've got Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to perhaps join with my colleagues in saying that the work we have done and the work that I've seen being done and the discussions of overview and scrutiny and the issues raised are always with the intention of ensuring best practice within overview and scrutiny. And I think we already have a track record of that because we now do not have a member of the administration chairing overview and scrutiny. We have a member from another party. And I think that is a really very important step in ensuring the independent, critical friend. And I just wanted to make that point, put it on record.
Yeah,
Thank you.
indeed. But, again, before I bring Counter Curtis in, this is this is what the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny, Good Scrutiny Guide is. It's best practice to do that, and that was one thing that I was quite adamant should be the case in this council. Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, actually, that was exactly the point. Councillor Coles has made exactly the point I was going to make. But also, just so I welcome these written reports, which I think is a very helpful step forward. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we've got in front of us we've got the scrutiny protocol that's been printed, and we've got a recommendation to council that the scrutiny protocol be adopted as amended, and that the monitoring officer be delegated to make any minor or legislative amendments to the protocol should the government's guidance change. Are you all in agreement with that? All in agreement. Thank you very much indeed. So that is a recommendation to council. Now moving on to the new prevent policy on preventing terrorism, and that is on pages 27 to 41. And so I've just find the page myself. And Councillor Giss, would you like to outline what this involves?
Yes, Leader. This is a new policy to address the Home Office Prevent guidance and demonstrate our compliance, or SDC's compliance, with the Prevent duty. And we're a specified authority under the Counter-Terrorism and Security Act 2015, and as such have responsibility to have due regard to the need to prevent people from being drawn into terrorism in the exercise of its functions. So the policy outlines the approach taken by SDC to ensure it's complying with its statutory duty, and it addresses each element of the guidance specifically. I'm not trying to jump on Councillor Crump's what I expect he's going to say. OSC suggested a glossary be included, which I think would be very helpful because there's a lot of different acronyms. A recommendation to Council is that the new prevent policy for Stratford-on-Avon District Council be adopted, and the Head of Law and Governance and Monitoring Officer be delegated to make any minor or legislative amendments to the policy should the law or government's guidance change.
Thank you very much indeed. And just to be clear, this is we are a specified authority within the legislation, which is the Counter-Terrorism and Security Act 2015, but we work in partnership with a great many other organisations, so that is quite key that we do so. But you've also highlighted that if government changes anything, because the legislation is in flux at the moment, that there is a mechanism for that to be for any updates to be managed. Okay. Anybody want to add anything else to that at all? Councillor Crump, did you want to come in at this stage?
Councillor Giss has done it for me, thank you.
Okay, so that it was covered by overview and scrutiny, and they were quite, they were also supportive of this requirement. So we've got a recommendation that will go to council, and again, this is to council, so that it can be, debated at council, that the new prevent policy be adopted, and that the Head of Law and Governance and Monitoring Officer be delegated to make any minor or legislative amendments should the law or government guidance change. Councillor Gish, do you want to just come back?
I wanted to check again with Mr Buckland. So if we're going to include a glossary, do we need to include some words there, just to make it clear?
Okay, yes, indeed. That would be advisable. And just again, as overview and scrutiny, it's part of the partnerships that we work with. I'm sure that that's something that if they ever wish to have them in, then that would be, I'm sure, would be part of keeping an eye on this, the progress.
Yeah, sorry, I should have come in really. I do apologise. Yeah, really serious subject. Obviously, we're a world-class attraction facility in Stratford. Internationally renowned visitors from all over the world, and I don't want to be pessimistic, but here is a potential target for all types of criminality and other issues as well. So we do have to be careful. But you're right, we take this seriously. Really good report, and I think as part of another session, we have some excellent training from the Prevent Officer from the County Council, who does it on districts and boroughs' behalf. I think, again, another session with Mr Thomas or his successor, because I think he's leaving. We're trying to get him to stay, but I think he's finally trying to get away. He's an excellent does an excellent job, and I think it's all about working together and bearing in mind what we've said at the last couple of cabinet meetings at the start of incidents. We do have to be aware, and this is something that's got to be a council's top priority. So yeah, more than happy to have them back and see as soon as possible. But again, a very serious topic, and again, welcome to all councillors attending OSC to hear that session as well. So thank you.
Yeah, yes, it's you've got my assurance that this will be a priority to make sure that people are can go about their lives freely and with confidence, and that is something that is absolutely crucial, not only in this town but across the district, right across the district. So thank you for that. We have the recommendation. Are you all in agreement with that recommendation? Okay, thank you. We now move on to the enforcement policy, and now this enforcement policy looks at all the kind of enforcement that this council does, and that is quite considerable. That we have to cover quite a lot of areas that we cover, and the policy outlines that it covers things like food safety, occupational health and safety, as well as planning enforcement and building control. The planning enforcement policy that we have before us, I'll leave Councillor Gist to outline it, but I will come back and want to add something to it.
Thank you, Leader. So this is an enforcement policy that it provides SDC's regulatory and statutory services with specific overall framework to refer to, and it's specific to each service area, noting that requirements may differ. The last enforcement policy was amended by the then Cabinet on 6th of December 2021 and then referred to full council, so it's appropriate time to be reviewed and updated. It's noted in the report that Appendix 3 is under review. A B, beg your pardon, I can't read my own writing. And expect members who'd like to input into that review. I'm looking at Councillor Couch because I think he might want to have something to say. The recommendation to Council is that the updated enforcement policy at Appendix 1 be approved, and that the Head of Law and Governance and Monitoring Officer be delegated to make any minor or legislative amendments to the policy should the law or government's guidance change.
And Councillor Couch, sorry.
Thanks, Leader. Thank you. I just wanted to make some comments about enforcement policy, which clearly, in relation to planning, which I know nearly every single member of this council has issues with enforcement at the moment. And it is a matter which is stated in this report as being under review. Yes, there is a review ongoing, but it is important that I think that all members are aware of that review and can contribute to it, because I know there's been, and I see it in the OSC, some comments about the involvement of parish councils, because parish councils, I think, are very concerned also about enforcement as well. We have got, we know, issues in this area, and indeed John Careford and his team have been looking very carefully at making sure that in our imposition of conditions in the future, they are enforceable and sensible, and that we're not just creating more work for ourselves, but we have to be an effective planning authority, and to be a effective planning authority, we have got to have an enforcement service with teeth, and it cannot be determined just because the what resources it has. It's got to be about what outcomes we can achieve associated with this. So there is work ongoing in relation to that, and I just wanted to highlight that here today.
Could I, before I bring Councillor Pemberton in, suggest that we actually add a recommendation that we note that the review of planning enforcement will be brought to the Cabinet on completion, because I'm sure that that is the intention anyway, but just to make sure that we do know that this is, that it will eventually come to the Cabinet for once it is complete. Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you, Chair. Just first of all, I wanted to pick up on Councillor Coucher's point and in relation to enforcement, and just Councillor Coucher rightly highlights engagement with town and parish councils during this review. I'd like to get some assurance also that there will be some formal mechanism to engage elected members in the review, so that we get the full 360 in terms of how enforcement is perceived, because perception is reality. And as Councillor Coucher says, it's outcomes that are important. So I think it's vital that we do record here and now that there will be member involvement during the review. Speaking as a member of the Public Open Space Task and Finish Group, a common theme around the challenges around some of those private management companies is enforcement. I'll make no more comment other than that, other than there is a theme there. So I think members in that group are engaged around enforcement. So I think there is clearly an appetite. I do want to just talk about the wider, but I think Councillor Coucher wants to come into something there, and I'll defer for a second.
Do you want to come back on
yes,
that?
I welcome those comments from you, Councillor Pemberton. I think it is important that all members are involved in that process. We are obviously working, I think, on a number of areas. So we've got additional resource now looking at 106 agreements and how they're implemented, and making sure that they are being done properly, which is something we've not done in the past. We're obviously wanting to ensure that when we have large developments coming forward in the future, that we actually get the highways, the other bits and pieces that are so important to make them satisfactory developments. And we know that unfortunately many developers wish to cut corners, and it's very often those facilities that we actually need are the things which don't get provided. So unless we are really robust in relation to the matter, I think one of the issues here is that planning enforcement strangely reports to the regulatory committee as things at the moment, and I think it tends to be that is just really in some respects going through the motions about numbers and pressures and things like that, but it's not actually talking about how effective actually we are in terms of doing it. And I think that's part of the review that I'm very keen to see that it comes on board.
I've got Councillor Pemberton and then Councillor Crump to come in and make any comment. Anybody else that needs to be on the list, or Councillor Curtis?
Yeah. I would just observe, as you say, currently enforcement reports into regulatory, and as you say, it is more a number crunching exercise. I think if the review were to say there was at least a dotted line into overview and scrutiny, if not a direct double report in some way, shape, I don't think that would be. We've got to find some way of. I see heads nodding. We've got to find some way of managing performance and outcomes.
To clarify on that particular point, as I'm sure Councillor Pemberton is aware, planning regulatory functions are the council side of the business. They're not an executive side of the business, and therefore can't report on individual cases into the executive or the cabinet. From a performance perspective, of course, and part of the performance management framework for the council is the performance of the planning and enforcement team, and that will come before the cabinet, as will the policy and the resources that are allowed for that. Their cabinet functions, but individual cases are for the position of the regulatory committee.
Yeah, just to clarify, I was talking about overall outcomes rather than individual cases. Just, I'm aware we can't start dissecting individual cases either, but something to enable us to have a better window on outcomes, and a mechanism to do so would be useful. I wanted to come back to the other side of enforcement, if I may, and it's really just to flag something for us to perhaps to think. It is becoming, and our enforcement policy touches on a large degree into the retail environment, and there is growing evidence that various different types of retail businesses are being targeted by organised crime and are a front for organised crime. And trading standards, which is a county responsibility, is front and centre of some of that. But when we're going into retail businesses, I think that we should be starting to think about having more engagement with our colleagues in trading standards, because if we see something that doesn't look right, we should be able to be thinking about flagging that to other parts of the state, such as trading standards and or the police service, because there is growing evidence that retail is being used. And when we've got a window on that, just something to flag that we may want to think about how we ensure we are joined up with other parts of local government and other arms of the state. And I make nothing more than that as an observation, that if we have opportunities to identify, we should be joined up. Nothing more than that. Don't think we need a policy on it. It's just a flag.
No,
for.
I think that is it's something that it will be part and parcel of whatever form of unitary authority. It will have to be. Obviously, if we're South Warwickshire, it's one of the functions that will have to be taken on, and it's already being considered by many people about what kind of overall way we will work with those organisations. Councillor Coles.
Thank you, Councillor. I think awareness is always very useful in crime prevention, but I would be quite frankly staggered if any of our officers or councillors now found something that they found was dodgy or criminal. They wouldn't do anything about it.
And Councillor Crump, you wanted to come in at this stage, and then I think Councillor Curtis, did you still want to come in? Yeah, okay.
Just very briefly, a couple of things. It's pleasing to see both Councillor Guest and Councillor Couch are mindful of the work we did last Thursday at OSC, particularly around, in this case, involving the parish and town councils, input into the working party that's been set up. And I think Mr. Perks agreed that that would be a reasonable thing to do as well. Trying not to put word into his mouth, and I think he's nodding okay there. So I think that's really positive. I think one thing with the frustration of OSC was whether we can tighten up the language. I think desirable was one of the words that it would have been desirable if we could use something else. So I think that was mindful. And the other thing I'm mindful of is, I'd probably be a bit hypocritical if I wasn't, because I'd said about the scrutiny policy and potentially being non-constitutional with the amendment. I am mindful of OSC overstepping its role and impinging on the powers and regulatory. So as an offer from OSC, we will be like to be a critical friend and work with the regulatory, but without impinging on their statutory rights. So that's just an offer, if that's helpful. And just mindful of this is basically a regulatory thing, but the performance can come to OSC. So if
yes,
that's helpful.
I note that. Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I think, as has been mentioned with the planning enforcement policy, as part of the review, it's essential that members are actively involved in it. We are here to serve our residents, and what residents want to see are, or what residents do see, are the outcomes of planning enforcement or the lack of it. And I think if we are to retain, well, I think it is essential that we retain or actually regain the confidence of residents in our planning and enforcement policy, because I think many of us, our email boxes are full of complaints about enforcement or the lack of it. So I think it's essential that we're involved in the review and that we can regain some of the confidence that I believe residents have lost in planning enforcement policy. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. We have in front of us the recommendation, and it is a recommendation to council. And before we, accept the recommendation, it is worth noting on page 56 just what the policy applies to. It is a long list of functions that this policy relates to. So just noting that, that is useful information. So the recommendation to Council is that the updated enforcement policy at Appendix 1 be approved, that the Head of Law and Governance Monitoring Officer be delegated to make any minor or legislative amendments, and that we note that the review of planning enforcement will be brought to the Cabinet on completion. Are you all happy with that? Sorry? Seconded. Councillor Coles has seconded that amendment. My apologies, because it was an amendment. And all in agreement? Thank you. And we now move on to the Licensing Act. Now, the portfolio holder, Councillor Grocott, is away, so I will cover for her. It is about a recommendation to Council about that the statement of licensing policy for the period 2026 to 2031 be received and adopted. Would the officer like to just kind of outline very briefly what the policy entails?
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me. The policy is intended to detail how the authority will handle applications, outlines and guides applicants in respect of what we as a local authority would expect from applicants when applying. Hopefully it is quite clear what has been added in. You'll see from the agenda that the policy is in there. It's on pages 85 to 112. And anything that's highlighted in yellow is new. So just to sort of highlight a couple of elements that have been added in, we've provided guidance on avoiding the sale of beers, lagers and ciders over 6.5 ABV, guidance on taking preventative steps in relation to drink spiking, proactive steps in relation to violence against women and girls, such as the Ask Angela scheme. The policy has been through a 12-week consultation. It's been circulated to all councillors, the regulatory committee, existing licence holders, responsible authorities and the general public. I did have some comments querying whether there's a sort of legal definition in respect of high-strength alcohol. After some research, there isn't. So for the purpose of this document, we have gone with 6.5 ABV as what we would sort of class as a high-strength alcohol. No other comments were received during the consultation. The only thing that I would like to just mention today is, and since the agenda has been published, that another, sadly, spelling error has been picked up, which is confectionery, and that will be corrected should you formally adopt today. And also the name of the licensing committee, which I think is at 10.14 in the policy document, will be amended to be in line with the name of the policy, which is the Licensing and Regulatory Committee.
Has any Cabinet member got any particular questions that they want to ask at this point? I mean, I note again that this is, again, we work in partnership with many other organisations on this one, so it is crucial that we play our part, and thank you very much for highlighting those particular areas where you've strengthened the policy. I certainly want to make sure that people have confidence when they go out for an evening, for example, that or when they buy products, that they're getting what it says, and that we are working with others overall on making sure that we protect people when going about their daily lives. So thank you very much indeed for that. I do appreciate also, but also on a previous the enforcement policy, how much work is done with voluntary organisations that we work with, making sure when they put events on. So thank you very much, and please take that away to the team. Any other comments that anybody wants to make? Again, there's some very, very good reviews that have been made in this policy. But if nobody has any other comments, then we put it to, again, it's a recommendation that goes to council. Does anybody want to second? I'm happy to propose it. Anybody wants it? Councillor Gist, second it. And that this is the statement of licensing policy for the period 2026 to 2031 be received and adopted. Are you all in favour of that? Agreed. We're all agreed. And thank you. And please take that thanks back to the team. Moving on then, we now have matters for decision by the Cabinet. And the next one is comes under my portfolio, which is the Strategic Risk Register, which comes under page 113 to 136. And can I note a couple of things that are on this risk register? It is for noting, really, that that it's being reviewed and considered. See whether any further actions should be taken to manage the risk facing organisations. It's something that we will ongo and take back through not just this Cabinet meeting, but through other meetings of this Council. It is sad that one of the strategic risks still is the cost of living and the pressures that will continue this next year, but also it's been highlighted, for example, the retention of staff and recruitment of staff, particularly during the local government reorganisation, and a few other risks that are very high that we do need to manage. And the whole idea of the risk register is to make sure that we are aware of them and we're ongoing, keep our eye on it ongoing, to make sure that nothing, that we manage the process through all the activities that this council does. Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you, Chair. I'll go back to the same issue that caused me concern at the last time the risk register came before us, which is around the question of the impact of cyber attacks and the consequent issues around business continuity. I continue to have concern. We've seen throughout the summer organisations larger and more sophisticated than ours brought to almost to their knees. I just want to, without going into the detail and giving anything adverse away, but I note that there was a review of our business continuity plans in September, and that's flagged a further review to be completed by December. I just want to, and if there is something there that you might want to update me offline, I'm happy with that. But I'm just concerned to note that we did a review and then that's triggered a further review. Is that what sort of lies behind that? Perhaps the Chief Exec can help me with that.
Yeah, I'll bring the Chief Executive in to answer this because it's more of an operational detail.
That's always my response, to be fair. Yeah, we keep them under constant review to ensure that the business can continue to operate in the event of a serious incident. And yeah, absolutely, the cyber attack that obviously most recently affected JLR, which I believe is the largest cyber attack in the history of the UK, we've got to be cognizant of that. So yeah, we're keeping that under constant review. Thank you. Yeah.
Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Judy. Yes, just picking up on the point of cyber attack, it's something that Mr. Barrow and I talk about fairly frequently, and I think members have to be mindful, and I'm sure Mr. Barrow will correct me if I'm wrong here, that it is human error that is the weakest link. We can have as many firewalls and as much protection built in as possible, and I think we have pretty robust systems in place, Richard, but I think any additional or any training that members can undertake to ensure that we are personally aware of all the risks and that we take personal responsibility before we open any phishing emails, because that is the most likely form of successful attack against us.
Councillor Crump.
Oh, I do. No, it's all right. So, no, I've been told I can't say what I was going to say. I am careful from phishing emails, especially from a Councillor D. Curtis. I'm always careful when I open that one. So, but on a serious note, the only thing we've touched on the things that over in scrutiny that were particularly affected, particularly around staffing, recruitment and retention. The other one that we wanted to flag, and I think it was going to be reviewed, was the risk around South Warwickshire local plan. I think that's fair that we need to do that, particularly in the light of the goalposts keep on being moved, and it's not just the goalposts being moved, it's the pitches and all sorts, the referee and anything else football analogy we can use. So we might need to spend a bit of extra time on that one. So thank you.
The Chief Executive come in on this one.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you for the comments from the OSC. Tony Perks and myself had the conversation following the meeting of the OSC on Thursday, and yes, on page 123 of the agenda, the likelihood element, I think we should increase the risk on that as the remaining risk in relation to the South Warwickshire local plan and the 5-year housing and land supply, obviously after the Borden Hill inquiry result. So yeah, we're proposing to change the likelihood to 3 from 2 because it's much more likely to happen now.
Okay, and I'm happy to accept that and to propose that change. Is anybody happy to second that one? Councillor Curtis? Okay, so we'll make that change and that is welcomed. Okay. Anything else that anybody wants to say? In which case we have the recommendation that the strategic risk register attached to Appendix 1 be reviewed and consideration given if any further action should be taken to manage the risks facing the organisation. And can I just emphasise that this is not done and dusted today. This is something that will be ongoing, that we will always keep an eye on all the risks and make sure that we are kept. And it is something that every cabinet member ought to look at and keep an eye on the risks register for their own particular portfolio in case there's anything that they need to be aware of and asking questions. So thank you very much for doing that. I'm happy to move that recommendation. Do I have a seconder for that, Councillor Coucher? And are we all in favour? Okay, thank you very much indeed for that one. We move on now to the SIL spend allocations, and this falls under Councillor Coucher, page 137 to 196.
Thank you. This is a really important piece of work that the Council's done. I really pay tribute to Sean Nicholson and the officer team who've put a lot of effort into this and I think come up with a much more coherent arrangement than we had previously. Members will remember that previously SIL allocation was basically done on the basis of bids. Those bids were very often not related to where development had taken place. It seemed to be quite unfair and quite arbitrary. And when the National Health Service came forward always to take the lion's share of the money, it was very difficult to resist. Now we have got ourselves into updating the infrastructure funding statement, which was grossly out of date when we came on board here, and we have a list of projects which are essential, frankly, to ensure that we've got the right infrastructure alongside the development that we've had. I think the one thing that I think all members are aware of is that when proposals come forward for new development, it's infrastructure, which people are most concerned about. Because frankly, if we don't get the infrastructure, all that new development does is basically degrade the quality of life of existing residents, and that's something that we are obviously wanting to try and ensure that doesn't happen. We clearly have some major issues, and I think those are also coming up within the South Warwickshire local plan. So SIL is really dealing with money that's come from development as a result of developments happened in the past. We know that we actually top slice that money and hand it over to town and parish councils, and they get that automatically, and that's for them to decide what should be spent in their particular area. This is about the bigger pot that we have that we can allocate. And as a result of that, we've had a whole series of proposals come forward. They have been scored, as you will see within the report, and there is a recommendation in Table 2 of the schemes that should be approved. I'm particularly pleased to see that actually flooding the amelioration of flooding has got a much higher profile than has happened in the past. I think the concerns that we have are that some of the major infrastructure requirements that we have are just too large financially for us to deal with through the SIL process. So some schemes, and I'm being very parochial here about the Wellesbourne Sports Centre, although that's scored higher than other schemes, frankly, we don't have the £2.8 million that's needed to provide that particular facility. So the recommendation, I think, is quite clear, that the allocation of strategic SIL, as outlined in Table 2, be approved, but that we should note that we still have outstanding schemes that need to be considered in future years.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Rolfe, would you like to come in at this point?
Yes, I would. And if I may, I'm not sure who I need to talk to about this, but item 10, Stratford Greenway resurfacing phase 2. Now, phase 1 is in my county division, and phase 1 was and still is fraught with issues, fraught with quite a lot of issues, particularly financial issues and the wrong surface put down, etc., etc. I don't want to see us giving any money towards phase 2 until phase 1 has been correctly done. And I'm happy to talk to whoever about the history of phase 1 and how and how it went on and how it's still going. It is still ongoing. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Has anybody, Councillor Pemberton?
Just an observation, the new rational scheme results in 4 out of 9 schemes serving communities that are represented by the leader and the deputy leader.
Can I make a point about that, because the school, Ulster Academy, is one that I was actually, I was asked to go into the head teacher's office before I was leader, and the point was made there that at no point had that school received any Section 106 or SIL, despite the development that took place in Bidford, Salford Priors, or the 2 developments that took place in Ulster. Some of that was because appeal, one on appeal, but none of the other ones had contributed towards that academy. And it is crucial that as part of the infrastructure, all schools are supported, because we now have a position where secondary schools, there is no spaces, not only at this school, but at other schools, to be able to cope with the increased numbers of pupils that have come into the schools safely within those schools. And they're almost a dangerous position in one particular case that I have seen. It has been something that has been that I raised, I think, way back in about 2019 that I raised this, that these schools in particular were not being supported in the way that it should be. Now, some of that is obviously not a district council matter, it's a county council matter, but there are other, it has been a regular pattern of not being able to support that kind of part of our infrastructure. Councillor Coucher.
I think it's important to state here very clearly that actually the evaluation of these schemes have been entirely officer-led. Members have had no involvement in relation to that. There was the opportunity clearly of putting forward schemes to be on the list, but that is the only involvement that members have been. I think what we're seeing here is perhaps areas that have been neglected in the past actually receiving it. Going on to, I think, what Councillor Rolfe has said. I think what you're suggesting is incredibly sensible. I think we do need to get that phase one sorted out, because it is not fit for purpose as things at the moment, and so therefore I think that needs to be the subject of further discussion.
But can we have a
Yeah.
chat about it and go through it? Thank you.
Okay. And Councillor Crump.
Yeah, just very briefly, there's a couple of things we talked about on the cell locations at OSC. It's mainly noticed that the smaller projects which had match funding seem to be the more successful. Obviously, you're trying to do more. So for bigger projects, it's potentially more difficult, and they may need to be broken down into stages. So I think that's important we ought to know. And the other thing, there was still some uncertainty. We did discuss this at OSC previously, and I think it helped to focus the minds and come up with a more coherent scoring process, which I think we have done, which is a lot better than the previous one. But there's still some uncertainty in the towns and parishes, and we felt that it'd be a good idea to raise at the parish forum about the SIL allocation process, and also trying to find out whether there's any barriers towards applying for this process, and whether that could be overcome, because the first indications seem to be that there was more applications coming from certain areas than others. So we just, again, perhaps trying to find the understanding whether there's any barriers to applying for this. So we do want to see it throughout the district.
Yes, indeed. I mean, I certainly would like to be able to see an analysis of SIL allocations and Section 106 allocations going back for many, many years, because there were certain anomalies that I have raised in the past that it would be useful to have a look at it, and that might be the kind of role that Overview and Scrutiny can have a look at, is the past allocations and the pattern. But it is essential that we set a standard where things are judged according to completely independent criteria, and then to make sure that infrastructure like schools, but also to make people safe, that these are absolutely crucial parts of our infrastructure. So thank you very much indeed for that. And John Kerford.
Thank you, Chair. So just to reiterate the points that Councillor Council made, yeah, this is an officer-led process on that basis. Just pick up the point Councillor Crump has made, just around parish councils. I suppose we're trying to get to a more strategic perspective in use of SIL. Obviously, parishes have got their own SIL part. But yeah, whether there's an opportunity just to provide the parishes with a bit more of an update and understanding how the process works. But what we've tried to move away from is those sort of really local community-based projects, and as Councillor Wright said, that more strategic spend of SIL. So it may be there's a change in the process for parishes. And then lastly, Councillor Rolfe, yeah, I'll pick up that point with Councillor Coucher about the Greenway, and I'll liaise with County on it and come back to you. Thank you.
Okay, we now have before us a recommendation, and Councillor Coucher, I assume you will move that recommendation that the allocation as outlined in Table 2 be approved, and that the remaining projects on the infrastructure list be retained. Happy to, anybody, Councillor Curtis, are you happy to second? Yeah, okay. In that case, are you all in favour of the recommendations? Okay, thank you very much indeed. Moving on then, we move on to the portfolio of Councillor Curtis, which is covering the resources portfolio. And the first one of those is the revenue budget monitoring period 1 to 6, 2025-26, on pages 197. Councillor Curtis.
Thank you very much, Leader. Right. So, the Revenue Budget Monitoring Report, 3rd November. The summary is to update the Cabinet on the position of the Council's revenue expenditure and income as at period 6, the 30th of September 25, together with an estimated net outturn position for each service for 25-26. There are the three recommendations. One, that the actual net variances at period 6 and estimated revenue outturn for 25-26 are received. Any issues identified for further consideration be addressed by a further report to the Cabinet or the portfolio holder. Secondly, that the write-offs contained within paragraph 3.1 be noted. And third, that the write-offs contained in paragraph 3.2 be approved. I'd like to thank Jess, as always, for preparing the report and appendices, which gives an analysis of the revenue, expenditure and income compared to the profile budget as at period 6, and reports an estimated end-of-year outturn. This high-level summary identifies variances at service level, and the period 6 position has been used as the base to arrive at the estimated outturn position for the year. Please note there is a revised estimated outturn position, table 7, which has been tabled this morning, which looks like this. So that's been tabled this morning, with apologies for that. Where we are. So, circular, yes. A breakdown of the earmarked reserve releases is given in Appendix 4, page 211, and that lists the current earmarked reserves with any changes. And the report lists the services that currently show or are anticipated to have the greatest variances. Full breakdown of the Council's services is found in Appendix 1, page 205. A breakdown by category of expenditure is in Appendix 2, page 207. And Appendix 3, page 209, shows the amendments agreed to the original budget approved by Cabinet. Point 2.1, page 198, the period 6 position is an unfavourable £268,814, but as noted, the estimated outturn position for the year end is expected to be a favourable position of £372,500, and this is an improvement from the first quarter from £65,000. So we are relatively early in the year, but this is positive movement, and I think it reflects this administration's sound financial management. The point 5, the budget monitoring statement period 6 position, the figures presented report the position at the time of the report. If members have concerns, they should request a further report to the Cabinet, as in option 1. There are a few major variances, and picking up on a couple of comments that were made at overview and scrutiny last week. Point 511, Head of Housing Revenues and Customer Services, agency costs, and this relates to specialist debt collection staff from Civica, and they specialise in difficult debt. So I hope that answers that query from OSC. 512, Head of Development, Planning and Enforcement shows a favourable variance of £307,791 due to planning fee receipts from several large planning applications. So that's a very positive move. And again, 514, Law and Governance. Again, there was an overview and scrutiny query over this unfavourable variance of £263,984. But as it says in the report, the majority of that is offset by a recharge to Warwick District Council. Point 515, investment interest still shows a favourable variance, this time of £308,334. Again, it's due to interest rates being higher than budgeted and higher cash balances, resulting in additional interest receipts. Going on to the budget monitoring statement, estimated outturn position for the year. Full details are in Appendix 1. 612, Planning Enforcement shows a favourable variance of 250,000. And 615, Investment Interest, a favourable variance of 630,000. As again, because of the higher interest rates and sums invested. As outlined in the Treasury Management Training, which was held last week, interest rates have remained higher than expected, but predicting future rates in such a volatile world environment is not easy. And I think Mr. Burrell's advice, which I would agree with, is that it's prudent to err on the cautious side when anticipating income from interest rate investment. Much better to have slightly over budget in that than anything under budget. So I propose the recommendations to the Cabinet that the actual net variances at period 6 and the estimated revenue outturn for 25-26 are received. Issues identified for further consideration be addressed by a further report to the Cabinet or the portfolio holder, and the write-offs contained within paragraph 3.1 are noted, and the write-offs contained in paragraph 3.2 be approved. Thank you, Leader.
Are you moving that recommendation?
Yes, I move those three recommendations.
Now, do I have any questions before Councillor Pemberton?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. Just a couple of questions. In terms of write-offs, we've got 382k over 366 accounts, plus NNDR write-off of 459k over 49 accounts, total of 841k write-off, which is relatively small in the grand scheme of things, but are there any particular themes that emerge around why we're then having to write these sums off? You know, is there anything that, you know, it's handy to have it back in if we can, but what do we understand about themes around that?
I'll ask Mr. Burrell for some comments on that as well, but certainly with council tax, we make every effort to collect council tax. A lot of that, I would assume, will be, as always, from people moving, unable to reclaim debt. If people do move back into the area, we make every effort to chase unpaid council tax. But Mr. Burrell, can you help out on that, please?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Curtis. No, I don't have the detail behind themes, but certainly the amounts that have been listed there are in line with what we see sort of on an annual basis. People pass away, people move and disappear. As Councillor Curtis says, if they reappear, we do continue to chase outstanding debt. I can certainly ask Hannah for some themes from the revenue section as to the categories as to why those debts are being written off.
I think if there's something by exception, if you're assuring us that you're running at the expected rate, and we have to accept that there is a rate that you're not going to be able to, but I think if there's anything by exception, something new that's coming out, that would be useful to be flagged through. I've got a couple of other questions, if I may.
Carry on, and
thank you.
Before we, then maybe you can wrap up at the end.
Yeah, just very quickly. Obviously, the builder control and planning fees are up, which looks as though, you know, on the upside, you know, we're going to be ahead. To what extent, if any, are you forecasting some of that being offset by the potential need for additional resources in those teams to service the extra work?
Yes, would Richard Burrell, the head of resources, come in?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I have been approached by the head of planning for additional resources. But clearly, when you see such a large increase of income, it means there's a lot more work to do. So we can't be naive to the fact that we are not resourced currently to service that level of demand. So some of that money will be committed to deliver the resources to clear those applications.
Councillor Curtis.
Yes, if I can just add to that as well, that Mr. Burrell has also indicated that it might not just be the planning service that needs additional resources, but environmental health obviously is also involved in planning, and it may be that county may need some additional support from us to help manage all of those additional planning applications. So we're well aware that there may well be additional resources required.
Okay, if there's no more questions, you have moved that one. Anybody would, Councillor Coles, are you happy to second? Yeah. In that case, are you all in agreement? Okay, thank you very much indeed. And moving on to the capital budget monitoring period 1 to 6, which again is under Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Leader. This is a fairly straightforward report. It provides the Cabinet with details of capital budget monitoring for period 1 to 6, April 1st to 30th of September. and the recommendation that the position on capital expenditure and income for the period 1 to 6, 25-26 is received. And again, any issues identified for further consideration be addressed by a further report to the Cabinet and to the portfolio holder. And as always, an excellent report from Nick Reynolds. Table 1 on page 213, the estimated position of 6,233,922 remains the same as the first quarter report given in September. There's been no movement from that. 1.2 in February 25, Council agreed capital expenditure for 25-26 of 2,619,000. With the amendments agreed by the Cabinet to date, the total capital expenditure budget for the current year, including Section 106 plus other additions and slippage, as outlined in 24-25 Capital Budget Outturn Report, now totals £9,288,070. Table 2, 1.3. This is derived from the additional removal of budget changes summarised in this table, and further detail of that is given in Appendix 1. Slippage at 4, this again was raised at overview and scrutiny the other day. Slippage at 4.9 million remains unchanged since my last report, and further detail of slippage is given in Appendix 1. There have been queries around slippage. This administration has brought slippage down considerably. When we took over administration, it was in the region of 12 million. It is now 4.9. Some slippage is, if you like, built in and expected. If a capital project is approved in year 1, but expenditure is going to be over a period of 3 or 4 years, then obviously some of that capital expenditure is automatically slipped into years 2, 3, 4, and so forth. Other slippage is maybe a result of events, dear boy, events. But I think it's certainly come down considerably. A summary of Section 106 and SIL monies for capital projects is shown in Appendix 2, and total of Section 106 held are £12.3 million. Appendix 1, page 219, gives gross expenditure by service, with a more detailed breakdown on pages 221 to 224. And Appendix 2 lists committed and uncommitted funds for 106 and SIL held by Council. Point 7, the conclusion and reasons for the recommendation. So 7.1, work continues in the current financial year to ensure that as many projects as possible are delivered within their intended timescales. However, as I said in September, there is increasing urgency to delivering these key projects that this administration wishes to prioritise. We have project funding. We have identified adequate reserves to employ additional resources to ensure timely delivery of projects. What we have even less of since the report in September is the luxury of time to deliver these projects. And these projects are for the benefit of our communities. It was why we were elected, so it's really important. Our final submission to the government is going to be submitted in less than 4 weeks now. Yes, at the end of November. And in less than 18 months, we will have in about 18 months, I did check this morning, we will have elections to the new shadow authority. So 26-27 is likely, highly likely, to be our last unfettered budget. So I'll just leave that thought lying with you. So I propose the recommendation that the position on capital expenditure and income for the period 1 to 6 of 2025-26 is received, and any issues identified for further consideration be addressed by a further report to the Cabinet or to the portfolio holder. So I make those proposals.
Thank you very much indeed. And Councillor Crump, you wanted to come in on this one.
Yeah, there's a couple of things on that. Obviously, thank you, Councillor Junid. We've seen significant inflation, particularly in the building area, in terms of equipment, materials, staffing. And obviously, the time value of money, a pound today is worth far more than it is in 5 years' time. And whilst the money is not being spent and the balances are still at a reasonably high level, and the interest rates that we're getting are at a higher level than anticipated, I still think they are leaving us out at a shortfall, because the extra income received from the balances, certainly in my opinion, won't potentially make up for the inflation on the price of the capital expenditure. But so I think it's a fine balance on that one. And the other thing as well is it became clear at scrutiny that the Procurement Act 2023 caused delays. Be interesting to see what those delays were and what was being done to mitigate those. Thank you.
Thank you. Any particular response back to that, or would you like the Head of Finance to come in to help you?
Well, yes. So, I mean, Councillor Crump, I think you're absolutely right. That particularly inflation in the construction sector has been extremely high, and we are working as fast as we can within the constraints that we have to try and deliver these key projects, hence my point. On the Procurement Act, I would like to pass over to Mr. Burrell here for a very brief outline, because I'm sure he will explain it rather better than I can. It's a nightmare.
I wasn't at I wasn't actually at overview and scrutiny. I'm looking at Tony, because so I don't know what the actual details of the discussion surrounding. So could I pass that ball over to Tony, please?
Yes, of course. Thank you. I'm willingly taking the pass on behalf of the Cabinet here. I think what was said at Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and probably bears repetition here, is unfortunately some of the actions of the wider sort of economy sort of around COVID and sort of contracts that were let there has led to a quite legitimate sort of tightening in procurement legislation, all done for the right reasons, but the practical effect of that is it now just all takes longer and involves more people and more resource, and it's that much more difficult to get money away and to demonstrate that we're getting money away in an ethical and proper fashion, which is obviously something that we should be doing, and it is important to us as officers of the council and to you as councillors. But the practical knock-on effect of that is it is more difficult to spend capital money than it used to be.
Thank you for that. Councillor Pemberton, finally.
Thank you. I would, Councillor Curtis, unfavourably compared the slippage under this administration, the previous administration, and referencing the 12 million, and did indeed say events, dear boy, and I would reference a global pandemic in which it's quite difficult to actually get projects away. So, yes, I would just make that observation, Chair.
Okay, you can, I'll allow you the indulgence, but I could counter, but no, I haven't really got the time today. Okay. So we have a recommendation that has been moved by Councillor Curtis, I understand. Councillor Curtis, you're happy to move that one. And Councillor Coles will second it. Are you all in favour? Thank you. Moving on then, we now have the Treasury Management Strategy Mid-Year Review, which again comes under Councillor Curtis. And that's pages 231 and 250.
Thank you, Leader. This is my final report for today. So again, thank... I didn't believe you had your microphone on there, Councillor. Right. Thank Katie Sylvester for this report and appendix, which provides members with a mid-year review of Treasury Management activity for 25-26. There are two recommendations. One, to note Treasury Management activities to date in 25-26 as detailed in an extremely comprehensive Appendix 1, and to note the prudential indicators detailed in Appendix 1 and compliance with all indicators. This mid-year report has been prepared in compliance with SIPFA's Code of Practice on Treasury Management and covers an economic update for the first half of 25-26, a review of the Treasury Management Strategy and Annual Investment Strategy, the Authority's capital expenditure as set out in the Capital Strategy and Prudential Indicators, a review of the Authority's investment portfolio for 25-26, a review of the Authority's borrowing strategy for 25-26, a review of any debts rescheduling during 25-26, and a review of compliance within Treasury and Prudential limits for 25-26. just a few comments. CPI inflation has ebbed and flowed, but finished in September at 3.8%, whilst core inflation has eased to 3.6%. But has that gone back up to 3.8 now, is it, Richard? Yes. Yes, but the latest inflation is now 3.8%. Appendix 1315, page 241, is a helpful paragraph to read, I think. Basically, public sector finance does look weak, and there is quite a bit of detail on that. Compliance with Treasury and Prudential limits, and Cabinet will be aware that many local authorities have significant financial difficulties. It is a statutory duty for the authority to determine and keep under review the affordable borrowing limits. During the half year ended 30th September, the authority has operated within the Treasury and Prudential indicators set out, and the Head of Resources reports that no difficulties are envisaged for the current or future years in complying with these indicators. We are in a very sound financial position. And all Treasury management operations have also been conducted in full compliance with the authority's Treasury management practices. Few points. 111, during 25-26, the minimum reporting requirements are that full council receives the following reports: the annual Treasury strategy in advance of the year, which was received, a mid-year Treasury update report, which is this report, and following the end of the year, there will be an annual review. This mid-year review sets out the performance of Treasury operations for the first 6 months of 25-26. Interest rates, Bank of England interest rates have fallen, bringing the current bank rate to 4%. And interest earned in the first 6 months of the year amounted to 1.87 at an average rate of 2.2%. But that is an average rate over the first 6 months. I did ask for that clarification. It's rather more than the budgeted figure of 1.52. So that 2.2% is over 6 months, not over a year. 133, our current sound financial position means the Council continues to internally borrow to fund its capital investment, and it is anticipated that no borrowing will be required in 25-26. We currently have no external debt, I beg your pardon, so no debt rescheduling has been undertaken in the current financial year. And I would like to thank the chair of the Member Development Working Group for taking up my suggestion that we should have some Treasury management training, and the recording of that, it was held last Thursday. I thought it was extremely helpful for anybody who was unable to join that session. I really would recommend it. I think it was an excellent training session. So thank you, Chair, for helping us to arrange that. Options available to the Cabinet is to recommend the Council accepts the 25-26 Treasury Management Strategy Statement Mid-Year Review. So I would propose that we note the Treasury Management activities to date in 25-26, detailed in Appendix 1, and to note the potential indicators detailed in Appendix 1 and compliance with all indicators. Thank you, Leader.
And you are moving that recommendation.
I will move those recommendations.
And I would also endorse the usefulness of the Treasury Management training. It's certainly brought home to me even more than from the press just how we are operating within a world situation. All the changes with the US tariffs, for example, has had quite considerable impact, but it was a very useful training. So you're moving that. Are we happy to, I'm happy to second that. Are we all in favour of that Treasury Management statement? Thank you. Okay. We now have issues arising from Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I believe there was a report from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for us to consider. Chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny, would you like to outline that?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Ginn. I think we've gone through most of the items as we've gone through. It is pleasing to note that the work of OSC has been recognised in the papers with any amendments, particularly around strategic risk rescue, the scrutiny policy, comments being taken on board by the portfolio holders, particularly around planning, and the work, how we can link with other committees, particularly regulatory around planning enforcement, and providing constructive and helpful, and sometimes one or two tongue-in-cheek responses back to Councillor Curtis. So I think that's always helpful as well. But I think on a positive note, it's good that the members of the Cabinet are there to hear, and sometimes by the time we come to my report on the Monday, lots of things are taken in place, and I think it's right that we get the scrutiny policy sorted. The only other thing that wasn't in the written report, and again I thank Mr Allison and the monitoring officer and Deputy Chief Executive for their input into the monitoring to the report. I thank them for that because I think there's a true record. The only thing to report back is that we had a very positive discussion with the portfolio holder for fire and rescue and community safety from the County Council regarding safe accommodation. And again, thanking Councillor Gist and Councillor Goals for, along with myself, providing the vast majority of the written questions to the portfolio holder, which teased out quite a few different points, particularly around communication, signposting our services and partnership working in this area. So again, that was a positive one. And again, in the same way, we've got prevent as the top of our priorities. Councillor Junid, I think we've also got the safe accommodation and also we're linking into other areas on a regular basis. So I think it does need to be at the forefront of our mind in everything we do, in providing as much communication, help and advice. And the only other thing that came out that was a really important point is that friends, relatives, colleagues of people who they think of being subject to such abuse, they do need to try and report that at the earliest opportunity. So hopefully you found as Chair of Scrutiny, my input in today's meeting a positive, and I've acted as a critical friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Do. And I do appreciate a written report, because it means then we've got it in front of us and we can take it forward, and it's very useful then as part of your role as a critical friend to the Cabinet. It is appreciated. Councillor Rolfe.
Yes, I do believe there is an issue with the Task and Finish group that Councillor Johnston wishes to ask you that came out of the scrutiny. Where's it gone? There you are. Is that okay?
Yes.
Your discretion, Chair. This is an opportunity for the Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee to feedback on behalf of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. We don't normally have other speakers from that committee, but it's at your discretion, Chair.
It's at my discretion, but it would, in future, it would be nice to know beforehand. But yes, happy for you to come forward and make your point.
I wasn't necessarily asking to speak. The issue, as I understand it, is in the minutes of your last meeting, 260, it is not clear whether the extension of the timescale for the Task and Finish group on private management companies was agreed.
If a proper job is needed, then I agree, because I have had. I think I was the first councillor that raised the problems that in 2019, and it does need to be tackled. I know it's not all the district council, it comes under, a lot of it comes under national legislation, but if time is needed to do a proper job, then I'm happy for that to be agreed. Is that anything else that is needed for that? Okay. In which case, thank you very much indeed. And anything else that anybody wants to raise? Otherwise, we move on to Cabinet committees. There's nothing Part D. En bloc items. And for the items in this section, they are approved en bloc unless a request is made beforehand, and nothing has been made beforehand. So that covers the Member Development Working Group, which has been, we've received the minutes. And part of F, other matters, urgent business. I've had been notified of no urgent business, so that means that the meeting is ended. Thank you very much indeed for your time, for your input, and for all the input that has been made, not only by Cabinet members, but also by members of staff. Please take our thanks back two members of staff for all their input today. Thank you.